Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakha HaKodash. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace, love, salutations, and blessings to the house of David, which is the elect. And I just want to touch on this real quick. As you see the title, it's coming from Roy RT, Russia Today. It says, "World can go on without U.S." Right, and that was something that the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, said during the G20 summit meeting in South Africa, over this past weekend. So let's read it. It's a pretty short article, just giving the, the sentiment, right? The sentiment of, these world leaders and how they are, viewing America and, the outspokenness against, Babylon, which is America being, the top country, the superpower of the world. That mindset is shifting. Okay. These even amongst America's own allies, right? Because you see how Nero Trump is moving. He's creating a lot of enemies, even amongst his friends, right? Amongst his allies, which is all, pursuant to prophecy, right? This is why we always, filter what is going on in the world through the lenses of prophecy, because it is the will of the Lord that is going to stand, right? And, eventually is going to get to a point where, not only America's enemies like Russia, Iran, right, China, not only them, are going to go to war, but the Lord is going to have it to where even some of America's own allies, right, are going to turn on it and, shoot it with missiles as well during this World War III. So these, verbiages that we're seeing, right, these different, things that are being said that showcases a negative viewpoint by what is commonly known as the allies of America, but now, they're speaking negative, right? They have a negative disposition about it. All of that is build up, okay, and it shows that prophecy is, things are moving toward what the scriptures, deemed is going to happen. So it says the center of gravity in the global economy is shifting. Mark Carney has said at the G20 summit in South Africa. Washington should not overstate its role, right? So it says it should not overstate its role in the international arena. And that is exactly what Trump does, right? He boasts, right, puffs up his, his position, right, America's position as being, needed throughout the earth, right? I believe he said something earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, something to the effect like the world is the U.S. or something, very, very arrogant, right? Something very boastful, which clearly is not true, right? This is why you have, these other nations that are doing business outside, bilateral business outside of, going through America, right? They try to bully them and it's not working. Okay, the weak nations are saying they are strong, pursuant to Joel, the third chapter. All right, something that comes to mind is China, I believe, in India, America tried to coerce them to stop buying gas or oil from Russia, and it hasn't worked, right? Trump went over there to China to, try to broker some tariff deal, and to this day, right, when he left, he tried to make it seem like, oh, they had a great meeting and things, are going to be booming for America, but yet there's actually still no official deal in place. Okay, when it comes to the war over there in Ukraine and Russia, he said that he was going to end that war in 24 hours, and it's still not being ended. Right, he just tried to lay out some 28-point plan that neither side really is agreeing with. So everything that America is trying to do to solidify its position as being a dominant country isn't working, right? And on top of that, you got the disarray inside of America. Okay, the implosion that is happening, inside of America with, MAGA is turning its back on each other, right? Because of these small hats, right? The whole America first isn't being showcased by the administration, which is causing, dysfunction amongst them. That's why you had Marjorie Taylor Greene retire. She says she's resigning. So there's just a bunch of stuff that's happening, right? It's a bunch of things that is just showing that America, as it says in Jeremiah 51, right? Babylon, it cannot be healed. Okay, so reading on, it says, Washington should not overstate its role in the international arena, Canadian President Prime Minister Mark Carney has said, adding that a wide, in Slovakia, I know I keep stopping, but America, Trump, right, and Canada through Mark Carney has been having, tension ever since Trump came into office, right? The tariffs and him saying that Canada should be the 51st state, all these things back and forth. So, like I said, it's a lot of problems that America is finding themselves in, right? It says, Canadian President Prime Minister Mark Carney has said, adding that a wide range of issues can be resolved without U.S. involvement. The economic center of gravity is also shifting away from America, he told journalists on the sidelines of the G20 summit over the weekend, right? And that's major. When you have an so-called ally of America is saying that the center of gravity is moving, economic center of gravity is moving away from America, right? This is how empires fall, okay? This is how you have situations that take place where the leading country is no longer having that big of a impact, right? Or is looked at as that, big of a need, okay, amongst these other nations. They're starting to see that, hey, we can do business with ourselves and not need America at all, right? It says the U.S. skipped the meeting held in Johannesburg, South Africa. U.S. President Donald Trump has accused the country of perpetuating a genocide against white farmers, citing that as a reason for his absence. Washington also claimed that only a chairman's summary could be released following the summit because the U.S. was not present. The G20 issued a declaration on Sunday anyway, you see? So they said, oh, because we're not there, you only can issue a chairman summary. But the G20 said, fuck you, right? we're gonna issue a declaration regardless. Okay, and it says Sunday, so this is actually today. So that right there is a slap in America's face. That right there is showing that these countries are moving away, right, from the U.S. dominance, right, the U.S. hegemony, and them being, the steering wheel, driving the countries, and that goes right into the prophecy, right, which we'll get, a couple scriptures. Let's just finish this out. It says the meeting brought together nations representing 3/4 of the world's population, 2/3 of global GDP, and 3/4 of the world's trade. And that's without the United States formally attending, Carney said on Sunday. It's a reminder that the center of gravity is in the global economy is shifting. According to the Prime Minister decisions reached by the G20 members during the meeting still carried weight despite the U.S. boycott. He also said Canada sought to strengthen ties with a variety of nations, including South Africa, India, and China, which those countries would be considered not non-friendlies, right, with America, because those countries are part of the BRICS nation, and BRICS was a conglomerate of nations that was deliberately formed, right, established to go against the American spearheaded a Western economy group of nations. So you had the BRICS, right? Which you once again, South Africa, India, and China is a part of it. Is a bunch of, and they have a bunch of other countries that are continuously joining it to form an alliance economically, right? And their whole agenda is to do trade, right? Bilateral trade outside of the American um, uh, um, economic system, right? Not using the U.S. dollar, not using the SWIFT payment systems, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Not using the petrodollar for trade and oil and all that stuff. Russia presidential aide Maxim Oreshkin led the Moscow's delegation at the summit and hailed it as a success, adding that his team had had a lot of constructive communications with friendly nations and even received some proposals on economic cooperation and joint projects from unfriendly ones. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa stated ahead of the summit that the G20 is moving forward and we will not be bullied, adding that the U.S. decision to boycott the meeting was, quote, their loss. Okay, so these are some heavy words, right, coming from friendlies and unfriendly nations, of America, basically saying we don't need you. And like I said, there's prophecy that point to this, right? There's prophecy that shows that these nations, right here in the book of Obadiah 1 verse 7, it says, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. You see? So these confederacies is what? These allies countries, right? And you have countries that may not necessarily agree with America on a lot of things, but they will be but they will do business with them, because it will be economically beneficial. But as it says in the book of Revelation, they get rich, right, with their delicacies, right, of the whore. But the time is happening, and we're seeing that the whore is running dry. So there's not much more of riches, right? There's not much more things that they can squeeze out of her. It says, I'm gonna read this in NLT. It says, all of your allies will turn against you, and they will help to chase you from your land. They will promise you peace while plotting to deceive and destroy you. And a part of that, the destroying, is economically, right? And it may not be overtly, but when you are doing business and you're not involving the America, right, or you are going around the American system, because America was getting paid or was getting money based off of these countries using their dollar. But now, if they're doing things outside of, trading outside of the dollar, then in essence, it's actually destroying the American economy. See? So they're plotting to deceive and destroy you. Your trusted friends will set traps for you and you won't even know about it. Okay. And that's also happening with a lot of these different organizations that are being created in these different regions. I think you got one with, I think it's India, China, like the South Asian countries, that they're becoming more friendly, right? China and India more particularly. And that is really, will have a negative impact on America, because if they're able to do trade within themselves, then they won't need, America as a consumer, because that's what America really is for a lot of these countries, right? America is the biggest consumer of these countries' products. But if they're able to have deals within themselves, in their region, then they don't need the American consuming to boost their economy. See? And all the while, right? All the while this is happening, like I said, you have the administration over here in America is boasting like as if business is booming over here. You know, Trump is talking about, oh, America is the hottest country, and everybody in America, none of the American citizens is feeling that, right? Everybody's speaking about how things are becoming more tighter, people are losing more jobs, right? Things are becoming more difficult, and all of that is happening because these other nations, right, internationally, are as the Prime Minister of Canada said, they're moving on without America. So if America is isolated, then that is going to have a direct impact on the economy of America, which is going to have an impact on the people of America. And this is going to, show how this place cannot be healed. Okay? This place cannot be healed. So Isaiah 19, verse 11, I'm going to read this also in the NLT, says, what fools are the officials of Zoan? Their best counsels to the king of Egypt in this chapter, right, is prophetically speaking about America, right? It's mentioning Egypt, but we know that this is, right, the modern Egypt. Okay. It says their best counsel to the king of Egypt is stupid and wrong. Will they still boast to Pharaoh of their wisdom? Will they dare brag about all of their wise ancestors? And I was watching something earlier where you had the secretary, I forgot his name, the secretary of Treasury, speaking about why beef is so high, and he tried to blame it on immigration, saying that some illegal aliens are came in across the border with their cattle. Okay, and it just made completely no sense at all. You see, so their wise counselors, these advisors to Trump, they're completely foolish, right? That's why the scripture says, is there any more wisdom in Teman? Right? It says, let them tell you what God plans, what the Lord of heaven armies is going to do to Egypt. And they don't know, right? This is what we're here to tell, to proclaim it, right? In Jeremiah 50th chapter, the Lord said, I have laid a snare for thee, and thou was not aware. See, because of your pride and your arrogance and them thinking that they could never be taken down, they're not realizing exactly what the Lord has in store for them. Okay. And a lot of these Americans, because they dwell carelessly and they are really under the assumption that this place can never go down, they also are, oblivious to what is really happening. All right. But, we always give thanks to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua that he has given us the eyes to see, right? And when we see articles like this, right, it shows, right, the mindset, okay, of these other nations, and that shows that mindset is leading to the fulfillment of these prophecies, because it's not like they were just going to wake up one day and everything was just going to be, in a disarray. No, it was going to be things like this, steps. Right, like I always say, prophecy is a process. Okay, the fulfillment of prophecy is a process, and in order for the fulfillment of this specific prophecy of America being destroyed, these other nations, right, that are allies of America turning on it, as it says in Revelation 17, the beast shall hate the whore. All of that is a process to that fulfillment. And things like this, right, with these type of headlines and America isolating itself, and then American so-called allies is saying that we can move on without America. All of that is, right, the Lord working on the minds and bringing this prophecy to pass. Verse 19, it says, the officials of Zoan are fools and the officials of Memphis are deluded. The leaders of the people have led Egypt astray. See? The Lord has sent a spirit of foolishness on them, so all of their suggestions are wrong. They cause Egypt to stagger like a drunk in his vomit. All right, so that's what we're witnessing. We're witnessing this place become drunk, right? we're witnessing the effects, I should say, of the drunkenness of Babylon, right? And as it says in Lamentation, that because it's going to drink of this cup, it's going to make itself naked, right? And meaning what? It's going to be shame. The shameful spewing shall be upon its glory. So, just wanted to touch on that. And just bring that out, just like I always say, keep watching because the Lord is working. So, with that, Lord willing, this is edifying unto the elect. Giving all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakak Wadash. Shalom.